The modern attack surface is vast and permeable, extending from the data center to the cloud and device edge. Security teams are stretched thinner and thinner as they try to cover this ground. The result? More high-profile breaches hit the news every day. Don't let your organization be next. ExtraHop delivers security from the inside out, helping enterprise security teams detect threats up to 95% faster and cut staff time to resolve by 2/3 or more. Act with confidence. Learn more at extrahop.com/securityweekly. Let the team at Black Hills Information Security test your defenses. With over 10 years of experience in penetration testing, red teaming, and threat hunting, the testers at Black Hills will help you find the holes in your security before the bad guys do. The team at Black Hills cares about educating and sharing their knowledge by creating countless blogs, open source tools, and webcasts for you to learn more about the tradecraft of pen testing and red teaming. Visit securityweekly.com/BHIS to join their mailing list and view the latest blogs and webcasts from Black Hills Information Security. Major data security breaches continue to make headlines. Are you prepared? Standardizing your security framework will help you stay competitive, be a reliable business partner, and manage intellectual property, financials, and employee and customer information. The American National Standards Institute, or ANSI, offers the standards you need in one place through standard subscriptions, a cost-saving, fully customizable solution. Sign up for your free trial at securityweekly.com/ANSI.
Welcome back to Business Security Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Jason Albuquerque. We've heard from our listeners that they love our content, but the amount of content we distribute can sometimes be a little overwhelming. We've recently released our customizable listener interest list. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe and click the button to join the listener list and let us know your interests. Also, register for our upcoming webcast with ServiceNow by going to securityweekly.com/webcasts. If you've missed any of our previously recorded webcasts, you can find them at securityweekly.com/on-demand. All right, on to our Security Money segment. All right, so Jason, you have not gone through this one with us before.
No, this is new to me.
Yeah, this is new. So let me give you a quick update on what we did 3 months ago. January 14th, we did our first Security Money segment. And the goal of this segment is to kind of just give everybody an update on how the security market's doing. So we created our own Security Weekly 25 index, which takes the top 25 pure play security companies and tracks them on a quarterly basis and compares it to things like the NASDAQ, because most of the companies in this list are NASDAQ. But if you look at the NASDAQ composite index, for example, it's got a lot of technology companies. So how's security doing versus the rest of the tech segment? So we created this little
that's great
index. Yeah. And the criteria that I kind of laid out when we built it was pure play security, which means there's a couple companies not in this list that I do like a lot, like Synopsys, for example. They have a really big application security portfolio, but the bigger business is on the semiconductor design side, and only 10% of their revenue roughly comes from application security. So I can't put them in here because it would really mess up the index. I don't have Cisco in here. Cisco's got a lot of great security products, but I still consider them a networking company, for example, right? So anyways,
it makes sense.
That was initial list.
Yeah, no, very good. This is new to me, so I'm definitely interested in going through this list and see why certain companies made the list, why others did not. You definitely opened my eyes to just the focus on the pure play side, right? Because when I first started looking at all of the information was laid out, I'm saying, well, why is Cisco not on here? That was one of the main companies I looked at and say, hey, wait a minute, why are they not on this list? So now I get it, 100% pure play. Awesome, it's good.
Yeah, the other criteria I tried to set, it's a little harder, is they should have a market cap greater than $1 billion. Now, there are two on the list that are just under that. Carbonite and Carbon Black both are just slightly under. They're in the 900 million range. And we'll talk about a couple tweaks I made to the list. And, we had an IPO last week in the security space. Their market cap is about 650 million. So they're probably not going to make the cut from the Security Weekly 25 index anytime soon.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yeah, and you looked at this from two different aspects, right? Well, actually three: public and private, and then startups.
Yeah.
Three.
I want to try to just give everybody a quick overview of how is our industry doing?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's hard to figure out how our different public-private startups are doing out there.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start with public companies. So first, I had to make a change to the index. And the way the index is set up, Jason, it's a market cap weighted index instead of a price index. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, for example, is a price weighted index.
Right.
The NASDAQ is indexed and weighted based off of market cap. So I used a similar approach with the Security Weekly 25 index.
Okay.
But VeriSign sold off their security division to Neustar. And VeriSign was on my original index, so I had to replace them. So I replaced them with SecureWorks. I finally figured out the best way to track the SecureWorks market cap. Took a little bit of work, but that was one of the swap outs.
Okay.
And when you change a company in the index, you have to reset the divisor and the weights so that everything balances back out. So on January 15th, I had to reset all the calculations, which I did, to make sure that the index was consistent.
Very good.
So that was my big change for this one.
Sure.
So where is the index? The close of business on Friday was April 12th. The index sat at 1,209.86. The original index was set at 1,000, Jason. So that'll give you a quick idea to say, so it's up 20.99% for the year, which it is.
Yeah.
It's up 20%. So if you had the same investments based on my market cap weights, you'd be up 20.99% for the year, which is a fabulous return.
Oh, absolutely. Can't complain on that.
No, not at all. Now, the NASDAQ, in comparison, the NASDAQ closed on Friday at 7984.16. The NASDAQ's up 20.33%, which is also a very good return.
Yeah, very good.
For the year already.
Yep.
But notice the slight little difference. The Security Weekly Index is doing slightly better than the NASDAQ.
Okay.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah,
because
it is.
Last quarter, I think it was slightly opposite. The NASDAQ was a little better than the Security Weekly 25 Index.
You seen any type of trends as to why?
There are. So I read an article, what was it, yesterday or the day before, about how there is a move out of the FANGs. The FANGs drive the NASDAQ, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, right?
Yep.
And I read an article, an interesting article that said because the FANGs are up so much over the past year plus, that people are looking to take some of their investment out of the FANGs. And believe it or not, they were putting them into some of the marijuana stocks. This trend that I saw.
I believe it. Oh yeah, it's a huge trend. I mean, just from being in a technology services company perspective, we're seeing more and more interest in investment companies who are buying into the marijuana vertical, trying to actually get an enterprise level IT consultant in there. Because if you follow that industry at all, it's a lot of mom and pop shops, right? A lot of mom and pop shops out there, and they're using small IT firms. Well, once you start getting venture capitalists to come in and invest, now they're saying, wait a minute, you have to act like a business. You need an enterprise technology organization who can help you streamline across all these different other companies that we've purchased, acquired, starting to merge. So we're actually starting to see that just in the technology services side of the house, where these investment companies are saying, hey, listen, I just bought 5, 6, 7, 20 cannabis industry type organizations. Can you help us streamline across all of them and create one business operations across all? And you're seeing it everywhere from the distribution side all the way to the growing side, the agricultural side, right? So it's unbelievable. Yeah, I totally believe that, because I'm seeing it just where we are on the services side.
Yeah, and so that is kind of one of those trends that may be impacting at least the FANGs, which is a big portion of the NASDAQ, for example. I also like to break down. So the other thing I do outside of the index is I update every quarter earnings and revenue based on the consensus.
Okay.
And so I update all 25 every single quarter. And I always like to summarize the results. So for example, this is for Q1 2019. So this is last quarter. Revenue beat by 3.19% on average, which is actually up from the quarter before, which was Q4 2018. So based on the revenue estimates of the analysts and what the Security Weekly 25 companies did, beat by 3.19%. It's pretty good. I mean, that's not a huge number. Yeah. The one that really impressed me was earnings beat was 21.7% higher on average than what the analysts expected. So you're seeing more of a beat on earnings and more of a push to profitability, I think, from some of these security companies.
Yeah. No, that's again, I'd be very interested in the data that you collected to see what made that huge leap, right? I mean, a 21.7 increase in one quarter is just, I look at that as massive. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, and I think it's looking at each of these companies and how do you estimate earnings per share. There's estimates and then you get the actual numbers. So in that spreadsheet I sent you, Jason, all the details are in there, by the way.
I'll dig in.
If you want to go look at it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing I look at is analyst ratings. The average analyst rating for the 25 companies is 1.56. It's a buy, but it's actually a little lower than last quarter. It was 1.44 for the Q4 companies. And so you're seeing some of the analysts be a little more bearish on some of the companies than they were the last quarter. We'll see what that impact is potentially into earnings when we do this in 3 months in July and kind of look back at Q2 2019 and see how that looks.
Yeah, no, I was reading some information too, just on a side note, just looking at investments over 2018. I mean, they hit a record high in 2018, but some of the information I've been reading is saying things like, that level of funding is just going to be unsustainable. So to kind of keep an eye out on that over the course of 2019.
Yeah, we'll get into some of that funding here in a minute because I track these on a quarterly basis too. I did want to highlight the best performers for last quarter and the worst performers. SailPoint beat the most out of all of them. They've done that 2 quarters in a row, by the way. SailPoint was my best performer last quarter as well. Zscaler also did really well against analyst expectations last quarter. And the worst performer, again, is Sophos. Sophos they've had a rough couple quarters.
Yeah, they're on a trend.
Yeah, unfortunately. And so we are seeing them take a little bit of a hit on the public market side. They are one of the few that's not NASDAQ. They're actually traded in London. So it's always fun doing the conversions to get all the numbers right when I have
Better
to do
you than me. So, yeah, I mean, I look at companies like Sophos and it's my question is, are they not innovating enough, right? Why aren't they? Why are they continuing to be on this trajectory down? And I think of it from an innovations perspective. As a CISO, I don't look at them as innovating enough, right?
Yeah, if you look at what Symantec, Trend Micro are doing, and Symantec's in this list as well, I think they're innovating more with their endpoint solutions than maybe Sophos is doing just in the pure AV space.
Right.
Yeah. We did have an IPO planned for Q2, and it actually happened last week. So last Thursday, Tufin, who is a sponsor on Security Weekly, went public. Their IPO was priced at $14 a share. They jumped up to over 19 on day one. They were still north of 20 today.
Nice.
So pretty successful IPO.
Absolutely.
In the security space.
Yeah,
now, their market cap, only about 600 to 650 million. So they don't quite meet the threshold to put them onto the Security Weekly 25 index, but I will be tracking them.
Starting to edge in, right?
Yep. You never know.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Now let's go to the private stuff because I also like to update the listeners on what's happening in the funding space, right? We just had Will Lynn on from ForgePoint Capital. Obviously, investment still going into the cybersecurity market. Funding in Q1 was $2.08 billion, which is up 100% from Q1 of 2018.
Right. And that leads into the conversation we just had about 2 minutes ago, right? About how 2018 was an incredible year, one of the highest ever. But is that sustainable, right? I don't know how sustainable it is. And part of that conversation we had with Will is that the market is so flooded right now with companies and startups and all these different different services and products that are out there. How sustainable is that funding future state?
Yeah, and what we saw in Q1 is it doubled over Q1 of 2018.
Right.
So, numbers look good so far.
Absolutely.
We'll continue to track this, but there's some big deals in this funding in Q1. One Login, which is on the identity side, raised $100 million. That's incredible. That's big investment.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's a great investment. But yeah, there were some companies on this list that I looked at and said, wow, a lot of funding going into it. I mean, KnowBe4 was another one that when I saw the list I don't know if it surprised me, but I think it surprised me that it happened already. That they got what was it, 50 million that they got invested?
50 million. Yeah.
I mean,
and they're focused on security awareness.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a big investment for that kind of solution.
Exactly.
There's some really interesting companies I track because of my application background. Contrast Security took 65 million. Illumio in the microsegmentation space, 65 million. vArmor, 44 million, also in the microsegmentation space, doing a lot with containers and the security there. Those three investments are really big in the AppSec space and in some of the cloud stuff that's going on.
Yeah, and then you had eCentire from the MDR space too, 47.6. That's pretty decent. That's a good investment right there.
Yeah, big investments. Yeah. We also had some interesting acquisitions in Q1.
Right. No, agreed. I mean, one of the big dogs surprised me here. The WebRoot. That one surprised me from Carbonite. Big investment. So when I read that article, I was taken aback. But I mean, Carbonite's going all in.
Yeah. Now it's interesting. So the total number in Q1 is 3.3 billion, up 32% from Q1 of 2018 in the cybersecurity space. So definitely some growth. I think the number of acquisition deals is down, but the volume of those deals are up, which means they're bigger acquisitions.
Right.
To your point, WebRoot was $619 million acquisition by Carbonite. Carbonite was on my Security Weekly 25 index from the beginning. They're one of the few that's just under that $1 billion market cap.
Right.
Now, here's something that's interesting. They acquire WebRoot for $619 million. Their market cap hasn't moved, though.
Yeah.
You would think that when you bring a couple companies together and you increase revenue, that over time you would see that market cap kind of tick up. It hasn't yet. So it hasn't crossed that $1 billion threshold yet. So I'm watching that because I want to see what happens.
Sure. Yeah. What's your thought process on that? Do you think it's going to move the needle here in a couple of quarters, or how long do you think that's something like that would take?
I don't know. WebRoot, the WebRoot folks are North Colorado. They're up near Broomfield, Boulder area. I've tracked them for a long time because they're one of the startups here. I like what they're doing. It'll be interesting to see what Carbonite does. It is because it wasn't a natural fit necessarily. Right. I mean, Carbonite's got a footprint on the endpoint because of the backup restore kind of stuff they were doing before. Does this accelerate Carbonite's growth because they now have more endpoint capabilities? I'm not quite sure yet. It'll be interesting to watch this play out, though, Jason, because I'm curious what Carbonite really does with WebRoot, and then how do the two together grow?
Right.
I don't know.
Yep, we'll keep an eye out on that one.
Now, that's a very different discussion than the next one, which is Demisto being acquired by Palo Alto for $560 million. I definitely know where this thing's going, right? I mean, the integration of Demisto into Palo Alto with Cortex and a lot of the acquisitions that Palo Alto's already done with Secdo. They made the acquisitions of a Redlock. There's definitely a strategy behind what Palo Alto's doing. This, I think, has some impact within Palo Alto.
Yeah, no, I agree totally. Yeah, I mean, if you've been watching Palo, and I mean, we're a Palo partner, Carousel Industries is, so we're always keeping an eye out on the strategies that they have out there in the field. And you can tell they've been building a very, very comprehensive strategy moving forward. No doubt about it.
So, I'm curious, have you dug much into the new Cortex solution? I mean, it's kind of where they're going to go after, I think, aspects of what some of the SIMs are doing with the correlation of the endpoint acquisition of Secdo.
Mm-hmm.
You've got already some of the network logging components coming together from what they already had. Right. You add a Demisto, which is the security orchestration automation play. Where do you see Cortex? How full featured is it?
That's yet to be determined, right? I mean, again, we're a partner. We are very much along the lines of trying to drink our own champagne, right? I say that all the time. I don't like eating dog food. So one of the things that we have moving forward is we're gonna actually try to take on and bake off all of the different partners we have. We pride ourselves on being vendor agnostic, let's call it. We have a lot of partners who compete. And one of the things we're going to do is take that full-fledged product line and bake it up against all of the other different partners that we have and see if it's something that we'd be willing to use internally for our operations. So it's in our roadmap. We're definitely going to be doing that. And I'll let you know how it goes once we've done that bake-off, no doubt about it.
Love to know. Because
absolutely.
Definitely some interesting acquisitions here.
Yeah.
I just want to see how all those pieces come together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A couple other biggies. White Hat Security was acquired by NTT Security for $315 million. That's an interesting acquisition. NTT Security being a managed security service provider. Right. White Hat Security was kind of a managed application security. Right. Logical sense to expand into the application space.
100%. And we just talked about that, right? I mean, just the conversation we had earlier with Will, from an investment perspective, the term pen testing now is 80% focused application at this point, right? I mean, so why would they not want to get into that application space? Of course they would.
Right. Agreed. Ideology by GB Group. I wasn't familiar with that one
me either.
much. Yeah. We talked about the AppRiver Zix acquisition. That was an interesting one because AppRiver was actually bigger than Zix. Zix is a public company, but again, they didn't make my threshold because their market cap was small. This was a huge acquisition when it was announced earlier in the quarter for $275 million. I mean, basically their entire market cap was that acquisition. But I have not seen their market cap, also similar to Carbonite, not really tick up yet.
Yep.
And so they're still way below my threshold to add to the index.
Yeah, this next one too I'd like to hear about because I didn't know much about Janrain.
I didn't either.
Yeah.
The Janrain by Akamai. Yeah, it was... that one was really under the radar for me too. I didn't really see that one. I missed it somewhere along the line. We might have covered it on Application Security Weekly before.
And their identity management, right, Janrain?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So how does that going to fit in?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Akamai has a lot on the web app side with their, not only the CDN but also the WAF. Does identity play into that longer term strategy? I am an app user data guy. I would like to see the app and user stuff come more together.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting if that's what they do with it. But yeah, I didn't have much insight into this one.
Okay. Yeah, and then we get into the startups, right?
Yeah, I mean, Paul and I look at a lot of companies, technology-wise. Paul does a lot of briefings with some of the newer ones. I get lots of requests, as we look in the startup community. A couple of the hot ones, Armor Blocks is a new one that came out on the email web security side, really leveraging natural learning processing, which is part of natural language understanding, to go after the context of email and web traffic to see if they can build the better mousetrap both for email and web. We know some of the limitations with the existing email security solutions that are out there. They're really trying to bring the contextual aspects of what's in the email, leveraging some of these capabilities to build a better email web security offering. I like what they're doing. Melinda Marks, good friend, is over there. So I keeping an eye on them to see how they continue to move forward.
I will too. I mean, I'd love to see how they differentiate themselves from the traditional folks who are on the market right now because, I mean, they're not perfect, far from it. A lot of stuff still gets through from the email side, and from a web security side, it's always the bane of my existence within our organization. So it's something that definitely needs a level of innovation because the same old just isn't working.
Right. Agreed. Definitely. And then Exceed is that last one. And the story behind Exceed is very interesting, which is why I wanted to mention them. we all struggle with username password. We talked on Application Security Weekly earlier today, even on identity and biometrics,
Sure.
whether it's fingerprint or face recognition. Still the challenges, right?
Of course.
Exceed's trying to eliminate the username and password altogether,
Mhm.
where they use a rotating one-time token for authentication.
Yep.
So even if the token were compromised, it's only valid for 60 seconds,
Right.
and then it's a rotating code. And I think they have a really interesting opportunity to disrupt in the identity space by going to this maybe one-time kind of token approach to identity, centralizing identity without federation and increasing the attack surface. So again, a really interesting technology to watch how it plays out, because I think there's some really great opportunities for disruption in the identity space.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm waiting for that day somebody perfects the, password-free authentication, because you want to talk about a win for security. When you can go out to the organization and say, "Hey, passwords are gone. This is all you need to do." That's a win for security all day long. Getting that user experience to be that much easier and having it be more secure, that's a huge win.
It would be a huge win. Yeah. And look, we've talked about the promise of universal ID forever. I think they potentially have an opportunity with the way they can centralize across multiple authentication sources to get us towards that path. But look, we're all tired of having multiple usernames and passwords. Who's going to get us to universal ID? I think there might be an opportunity with these guys. It'll be interesting to watch it play out. But it doesn't matter which system you're logging into. Can I use a single kind of approach to get into it and not have to remember all the variations? Because oh my gosh, it kills me every day.
I agree. And can you imagine? I mean, it kills us where we're practitioners and we're in the field. Can you imagine what it does to the typical end user?
Yes, agreed.
So I'll be keeping my eye on this as well.
Well, that was all I had for the security money segment this week.
No, this was great. I definitely appreciate being involved in this now, because it's giving me a whole new outlook on the security as a business, and security as the monetary side of security, I guess you could say, right? The investment side and the monetary side. So I'm going to be digging in more and more into this, because it's very interesting. I love it. Yeah,
and I love to know how the rest of our market is doing, and this is a way for me to stay on top of how's the market doing.
Very good, very good.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason, for joining me, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.